They say age is just a number, but in Japan it's more like an art form. Here, men and women well into their 80s walk through parks with quiet grace, their movements slow, deliberate, and full of life. They do not chase youth, they nurture it, one gentle motion at a time. You see, longevity in Japan isn't a miracle or mystery. It's a mindset practiced through the body. For elders in Japan, movement isn't exercise, it's conversation with life itself. Each stretch, each slow turn is a reminder that the body was never meant to grow stiff with age, only wiser. These small nightly movements, often done in silence, help keep joints loose, muscles alive, and the mind calm. Not because they are complex, but because they are consistent. They teach balance, patience, and gratitude. Today, we explore this quiet secret, 3 simple Japanese moves that can restore your energy, reduce pain, and help you live not just longer, but lighter. Welcome back to Longevity Talks. I'm your host, John, and joining me today is one of the most respected figures in Japanese medicine, Dr. Shigeaki Hinohara. He's lived beyond 100 years and spent his life studying what truly keeps us young. Doctor, it's an honor to have you here.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to share what I've learned. You know, in Japan, we don't see aging as a disease to be cured. We see it as a season to be understood. And just as every season has its own rhythm, our bodies too need a rhythm of movement to stay alive. When I was a young doctor, I observed elders in rural Japan who worked in the fields, tended their gardens, and moved gracefully, even in their 80s. Their secret was not strength, it was softness. These 3 movements I often share are simple: a gentle shoulder roll to release tension from the day, a slow twist of the torso to awaken internal organs, and a quiet leg stretch that helps blood flow through the lower body. They take only a few minutes before bed, but their effect is powerful. Each movement tells the body, you still belong to life. You see, John, the body listens. When you move with care, it responds with gratitude. Our muscles remember kindness. Our joints reward patience. In my experience, health after 60 depends less on what you take and more on what you give. Attention, time, and breath. We must learn to move not with ambition, but with awareness. Many older adults I meet fear slowing down, but I tell them, slowing down is not stopping, it's refining. When you move slowly, you allow the mind to follow the body. That unity is healing. So these 3 movements are more than physical exercise, they are meditation in motion. And when done daily, they don't just keep the body flexible, they keep the spirit young.
That's beautifully said, Doctor. It's almost as if movement becomes a dialogue between age and vitality.
Exactly, John. In Japan, we call it ikigai, the reason to wake up in the morning. For many elders, these quiet routines are part of that purpose. The goal isn't to avoid aging, it's to age well. To feel light in your steps, clear in your thoughts, and grateful in your heart. When you treat movement as medicine, the years no longer feel heavy. They begin to flow.
Doctor, you mentioned something that really touched me. That movement in Japan is more than exercise. You called it a kind of conversation with life. Could you share what that really means? Why do you think movement holds such deep emotional and spiritual value in your culture?
That is a beautiful question, John. You see, when most people think of exercise, they imagine effort. Running, sweating, pushing, lifting. But in Japan, especially among the older generations, movement is not about effort. It is about connection. It is not something we do to the body. It is something we do with the body. Our elders have always believed that the way we move reflects the way we live. When we move harshly, rushing through each task, our life becomes rushed. When we move gently, with attention and gratitude, life itself begins to soften around us. This is why in Japan, daily movement is not seen as a duty but as a dialogue, a chance to listen to what the body is saying. For example, in the mornings, you may see elders walking through the park, slowly lifting their arms toward the sun, turning their wrists, opening their chests, breathing deeply. They are not training for anything. They are greeting the day, communicating with their breath, their joints, their muscles. They are saying, "Thank you for carrying me this far." These gestures are small but deeply symbolic. They remind the body that it is still needed, still part of the rhythm of life. This is a form of wisdom that cannot be taught in gyms or textbooks. It comes from years of living close to nature, From noticing how even the trees bend with grace when the wind blows, how rivers move effortlessly around stones instead of fighting them in my medical practice, I noticed that those who lived longest were not always the ones who ate the most vegetables or took the best medicines, though those things matter too, but the ones who treated their bodies with kindness. They moved often, yes, but never violently. They walked instead of sat. They stretched instead of strained, and most importantly, they never lost their relationship with their own breath. Breath, John, is the bridge between mind and body. When you move with awareness of breath, you unite the two. This is what keeps our elders calm, stable, and emotionally centered even as the years pass. There is a saying we use often, "Karada wa kokoro no utsushi kagami." The body is a mirror of the heart. When the heart is anxious, the body tightens. When the heart is peaceful, the body flows. Movement becomes a tool to observe this relationship. I once met a woman in her late 90s who lived alone in a small village near Kyoto. Every morning, she would perform a slow series of motions, almost like a personal dance, circling her shoulders, bending her knees, lifting her arms, smiling softly. When I asked her what she was doing, she said, "I am asking my body how it feels today." That to me is the perfect example of movement as communication. She was listening, not commanding. And because she listened, her body continued to serve her gracefully for decades. We must remember that the body is not a machine. It is a living partner. Machines wear down when used, but the body, when moved with gentleness, becomes stronger, lighter, more alive. This is the paradox that many people forget. When you force your body, it resists. When you respect it, it responds. That respect is expressed in how you move, how you rest, how you breathe. In Japan, we practice simple forms, like radio taiso, the national morning exercise, or light stretching before bed. These routines are small rituals of presence. They remind us that health is not something you chase. It's something you maintain through quiet consistency. So when I say movement is a conversation with life, I mean that each motion, a twist, a breath, a stretch, is a way of saying, "I am still here." For older adults, this is profoundly empowering. It transforms movement from an obligation into a celebration. Every stretch becomes an expression of gratitude. Every breath becomes a way to honor the moment. Over time, this mindset changes how people age. Their joints remain loose, their posture stays upright, and their spirits remain bright. The body, like the heart, thrives on attention. When you move with awareness, you tell your body that it matters, and the body rewards you with energy. Balance and calm, John. I have lived over a century, and I have come to believe that longevity has less to do with medicine and more to do with attitude. The elders of Japan do not fear aging because they do not see it as losing something. They see it as returning to simplicity, and in that simplicity, movement becomes meditation, the art of living inside your body with peace. When you move not to look young but to feel alive, age loses its power. What remains is rhythm. The gentle rhythm between breath and being, between the heart and the world around you, and that is where true health begins.
Doctor, in our last conversation, you said something that really stayed with me, that real vitality after 60 doesn't come from pushing harder, but from moving softer. It's such a beautiful idea, but also one that feels opposite to what most people are told about staying active as they age. Could you explain what you mean by softness over strength, and why gentleness can sometimes be the key to longevity?
Yes, John. That idea surprises many people at first because in much of the world, we are taught that strength means resistance, lifting heavier, running faster, doing more. But the truth is, after 60, the body begins to speak a different language. It doesn't need to be pushed. It needs to be understood. What I mean by softness is not weakness but harmony, the ability to move in alignment with your body's natural rhythm rather than against it. In Japan, this is a principle we learn not only in health, but in life. We observe how bamboo bends with the wind and does not break. We see how water flows around obstacles instead of fighting them, and yet it shapes mountains over time. There is great power in softness, but it is a quiet power, one that sustains instead of exhausts. When I was young, I believed health came from energy, from doing more, from never stopping. But as I grew older and cared for patients in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, who still smiled, still walked to the market, still tended their gardens, I realized they lived by a different rhythm. They did not chase effort. They cultivated ease. Their movements were small, slow, and full of awareness. They did not wake up thinking about burning calories. They thought about circulation, balance, and breath. They understood that the body, like a musical instrument, plays best when tuned gently. If you pull the strings too tight, they break. If you let them go completely, they lose their tone. The art is in the balance. For older adults, softness means paying attention to what the body is asking for each day. Some mornings you feel strong. Other days you feel fragile. But both are natural. When you honor that fluctuation, you allow your body to adapt and heal. Many people injure themselves not because they move too little, but because they move without listening. They push through pain. They ignore fatigue. They believe discipline means control. But in truth, discipline means respect. The kind of respect that comes from knowing your limits and working with them, not against them. In Japan, the elders practice gentle routines, often inspired by Tai Chi or Radio Taiso. These slow-flowing movements allow blood to circulate freely, joints to stay lubricated, and the heart to stay calm. They are designed not to build muscle, but to maintain harmony between the inner and outer body. I remember visiting an elderly man in Okinawa who was 102 years old. Every morning he would sit outside and slowly rotate his wrists, ankles, and neck while breathing deeply. It looked effortless, almost too simple. I asked him, "Is that really all you do?" He smiled and said, "Yes, because I plan to do it for the rest of my life." That is the essence of softness, sustainability. A practice that is gentle enough to repeat daily becomes a lifelong companion. Intense exercise may bring quick results, but gentle movement brings enduring health. The body loves consistency, not punishment. There is also a deep emotional side to this, John. When you move softly, your mind follows. Your thoughts slow down, your breath deepens, your heart rate steadies. You become aware of the small sensations, the stretch of your spine, the air entering your lungs, the quiet rhythm of your steps. This awareness creates peace, and peace is medicine. I've seen patients whose blood pressure lowered simply because they learned to move without tension. Stress tightens the body. Softness releases it. Over time, this release keeps energy flowing freely, prevents stiffness, and preserves balance, both physical and emotional. The other thing softness gives you is trust. Many older people are afraid of falling, of losing control, of becoming fragile. But when you practice gentle movement, you rebuild confidence in your body. You realize it still responds, still supports you, still remembers how to flow. I often tell my patients, do not try to conquer your body, cooperate with it. When you walk, feel the earth beneath you. When you stretch, move slowly enough to notice the breath. When you rest, rest without guilt. All of this is part of the same philosophy. A kind of softness that doesn't surrender but adapts. In the West, people sometimes equate youth with power. But in Japan, we equate longevity with balance. A strong tree that does not bend in the storm will fall, but the soft one survives. The same is true for us. The more you try to hold on to youth through force, the faster it slips away. But when you embrace the grace of slowing down, moving gently, breathing deeply, honoring each day, you begin to experience aging not as decline but as transformation. So when I say move softly, I mean to live softly too. Be kind to your body, to your heart, to the years that have carried you this far. Strength is not in how much weight you lift, but in how much peace you can hold inside. Softness allows that peace to grow, and when you practice it daily, it becomes your natural state, calm, balanced, and quietly powerful. That, John, is the real foundation of longevity.
Doctor, in our earlier talks, you mentioned something deeply moving, that aging is not a decline, but a refinement. You said when elders move with awareness, they nurture ikigai, that quiet sense of purpose that keeps life meaningful, even as the years go by. Could you explain more about how awareness and mindset shape the way we age, and how this philosophy helps people live not just longer, but more peacefully?
Yes, John. I believe that how we experience aging depends far more on our awareness than on our biology. The body changes, yes, it slows, it weakens, but the mind decides how those changes feel. In Japan, we are taught from a young age that awareness is the foundation of grace. When you move with awareness. When you eat with awareness. When you speak, you choose your words with care. This mindfulness turns ordinary acts into sacred moments. Aging, too, is an act of awareness. It is the art of noticing. Noticing how your body shifts, how your energy transforms, how your priorities evolve. The elders who live long and happy lives in Japan are not the ones who resist aging, but the ones who learn to live inside it, gently and with curiosity. Awareness is what keeps us connected to life's rhythm. When you are young, your body does things automatically. You move quickly, you recover fast, you don't think much about each breath. But after 60, everything slows, and that slowing down can become a gift if you see it as an invitation to live more consciously. When you raise your arm, you feel the stretch. When you walk, you notice the weight of your feet on the ground. When you breathe, you sense the air entering and leaving your lungs. These small recognitions remind you that you are still alive, still present, still part of this moment. Awareness turns aging from something that happens to you into something that happens with you. I remember one of my patients, an 87-year-old woman who had lost her husband years before. She told me she felt empty and old until she began gardening again. Every morning she would tend to her flowers, feeling the soil between her fingers, smelling the air, listening to the wind. "When I'm in the garden," she said, "I don't feel 87. I just feel alive." That is awareness. She wasn't thinking about how long she had lived or how much time she had left. She was simply living this moment fully. That mindset nourished her more than any medicine I could prescribe. You mentioned Ikigai, John, our reason for being. For many elders in Japan, Ikigai is born from awareness. It's not always something grand like a mission or career. Sometimes it's as small as making tea perfectly, feeding the birds, walking to the market, or caring for grandchildren. These daily rituals give rhythm to the days, and rhythm gives meaning to life. When you do something with awareness, it becomes sacred, and that sacredness keeps your spirit young. Many people fear aging because they see it as losing control, losing strength, memory, independence. But awareness brings a different kind of control, one rooted in acceptance rather than resistance. When you are aware, you stop fighting what you cannot change, and you begin to nurture what you can. You realize that though your body may tire, your heart can still grow stronger. Though your steps may slow, your appreciation for life can deepen. In Japan, we often say, the last third of life is the harvest. It is the time when the seeds of your younger years, kindness, patience, curiosity, begin to bloom. But this harvest only comes if you are awake enough to notice it. I also believe awareness protects health in very practical ways. When you are mindful of your movements, you prevent falls. When you eat slowly, you digest better. When you breathe deeply, you calm your nervous system. So awareness is not just spiritual, it is biological. It keeps the body in harmony, the mind in balance, and the emotions steady. I've seen elders who still walk with poise at 90 because they've trained their awareness, not just their muscles. They move consciously, they eat consciously, and they rest consciously. This mindful living becomes a form of quiet medicine. Aging gracefully, John, means letting go of comparison. The moment you stop comparing your 70-year-old body to your 30-year-old one, peace begins. Awareness teaches you to live with what is, not what was. It reminds you that every wrinkle, every grey hair, every slower step is not a loss but a story, a sign that you've lived, learned, and loved deeply. When you bring that awareness to your movements, to the small stretches before bed, the morning walks, the slow breathing, those actions become a way of saying thank you to your body for carrying you through so many years. I tell my patients often that the goal is not to avoid aging, but to participate in it. When you are aware, aging becomes participation, an active engagement with your own evolution. You stop running from time and start walking with it. And in that walking, in that calm awareness of each step, you find freedom. That is the beauty of growing older, with mindfulness. You realize that even as the body fades, the light of consciousness becomes brighter. That light, that awareness, is what truly keeps you alive long after the calendar stops counting.
What a beautiful reminder, Doctor, that health isn't a race but a rhythm, that aging isn't something to fight, but something to understand.
Yes, John, live gently. Move often. Breathe with awareness. Let every day be a quiet celebration of being alive. Don't chase youth, nurture life. When you wake with gratitude and rest with peace, the years will take care of themselves. Longevity is not about how long we live, but how deeply we live each moment.
Thank you, Doctor, and thank you to our listeners. If this touched your heart, subscribe for more stories of wisdom and mindful living.